We're going to report, of course, on jobs and investment, and that's what we're all interested in. So, I would really look at it as, are we really planting seeds for the future economy? It's got to focus, I think, on innovation and technology. A lot of the businesses are technology and life science oriented, not all of them, but many. And so I would hope and expect to see considerable growth in both jobs and investment. I would hope and expect to see more and more schools engaged in the program, more and more space. We're up to 5 million square feet of space, much of which was underutilized space. And I think we're going to have some real, blockbuster, next generation type of businesses come out of the program. So, the same metrics that we use, return on investment, I think we're changing the culture. Importantly, I think we're changing the culture of academia, students, and industry in some ways that are very important and not so easy to measure. But I think it's important to do that in New York State. I think we have a history of losing too many students. Too many of our STEM degrees went elsewhere. We have to provide opportunity for students. We have to provide internship opportunities. We have to plant the seeds of future growth. And I think we'll see, additionally, obviously, a lot of employment and capital investment. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Tim Kennedy.
Thank you, Commissioner. Great to see you here once again. Always good to see you, whether it's here in Albany or back in Buffalo. I have to just start by thanking you for everything that you've been doing on the economic development front. Your work has just been tremendous, and sharing in my colleagues' sentiments. You're somebody that is on the ball, is engaged on a very local, grassroots, ground level, not afraid to get your hands dirty, and does whatever it takes to be helpful to growing jobs in the economy from my work with you. So thank you for everything that you've been doing. Certainly appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator.
I want to get into the Buffalo Billion a little bit. Can you give us a general update, and I'll save a couple of questions until I hear from you.
Sure. Boy, how long do you want me to talk for on that?
You got about 30 seconds. Just kidding.
Well, almost $900 million has been committed across the now, well-publicized projects. Obviously, the Solar City plant at Riverbend is nearing completion. We're actively working on the Workforce Development Center in Northland, several initiatives downtown around the medical campus, downtown with IBM, with Albany Molecular, Buffalo Manufacturing Works, trying to boost the ecosystem for manufacturers and innovation, really giving small and medium manufacturers the opportunity to really innovate through shared resources. 43 North, which is the largest business plan competition in America, has generated a keen interest. We are really starting to seed the pond of innovation in Buffalo, and I can't tell you, well, you already know what amazing publicity that program and so many others has gotten for Buffalo in recent years. It's a fabulous story. But the story of the Buffalo turnaround to me is something that we should all be very proud of. I think most people would have said, I think most Buffalonians would have said 5 years ago that it was impossible. I have brought a newspaper article that has a headline, $19.5 billion, the value of investment that has been committed to Buffalo and Western New York. My son was recently, I'm proud to say, interviewed by Katie Couric for Yahoo Finance, and it was the whole story on the Buffalo turnaround, and he has an expression for it, boomerangs. And he'll tell the story because really the acid test is, what are the 20-year-olds doing, right? Are they staying in town? Are they coming back to town? He calls them boomerangs. Kids who've left Buffalo and are coming back to Buffalo, and the young population is growing for the first time. And anyone up here who's from Buffalo or Western New York, need me to sell them on what's happened and what's happening in terms of the economy and the attitude in Buffalo. But, you know, we've got almost 900 committed, probably now over half of that out the door. The enthusiasm, the focus on revitalization downtown, Canal Side, the revitalization of so many neighborhoods. And it's not just Buffalo Billion Project, it's the whole strategy. The Buffalo Billion strategy is consistent with REDC, Western New York strategy. Everything we do, Power Proceeds, Excelsior, Buffalo Billion, REDC, it all looks through the same lens, and it all advances that strategic plan. And I think that is why we're seeing so much positive change, and the value of that planning and the value of that broad community engagement in the economy. And it's not that I just see it in Buffalo, I see it across the state. I've spent very little time in Buffalo this year, actually, so I hope it's, you know, I miss it. But it is fabulous to see everyone getting off of the sidelines into the game of economic development, taking a keen interest in their own economic futures. I see that having a positive impact everywhere. But I think it's going really well, and I'm proud of VSD's role in that. I was proud to be part of the Western New York Regional Economic Council. I'm proud of the legislature and the governor for committing that kind of money to a town that had 40 bad years. It's a very different place right now, and it's a wonderful thing to see.
Thank you very much. You answered a lot of my questioning regarding the Buffalo Billion in that. Let me just switch gears quickly, because I know we're short on time here to keep things moving. The executive budget, you know, you talk about the young people staying in town and being able to stay in Western New York.
Yeah.
I know a lot of what we've been trying to do is prevent the brain drain, as we refer to it. You know, it was my generation, 18 to 35-year-olds that left by the tens of thousands over those 40 years. We want to bring them back, including your son. You know, there was a decrease in funding for the Centers of Excellence in the proposal of $1.3 million. That includes 2 centers in Buffalo, but this impacts the Centers of Excellence statewide. Do you know if it'll have any impact on the local utilization of these centers? And then, you know, just to continue on with the higher ed questioning, and then I'll defer. You know, the Regional Council has also been working with higher education. And can you just discuss some of the budgetary items that will encourage communities like Buffalo and Western New York to continue this collaborative effort between economic development and higher ed?
You know, what we used to refer to as NISTAR, funding for that is really quite robust in total. And I know there's been in some cases, there's a legislative add, I believe, that has happened in the past, and in some cases, we just have some modest cuts because we've added a kind of an additional, you know, statewide center that has helped to coordinate or help to bring solutions to bear on behalf of different companies and users. So I think the funding in total, if you look at CATs and COEs and MEPs and hotspots and incubators, is very robust. I feel very confident that we will deliver services. We will be able to help companies. We will be able to do both basic research and applied research. I think what New York State does is fabulous with respect to really providing you know, this type of support to business, connecting business to industry that way, and also funding incubators and hotspots. So if I look at the funding overall, I think I'm very confident that we will provide those services in a very robust, effective way this year.
And I had a follow-up question on the higher education economic development collaboration. Can you just speak to that too, please?
You know, one of the things I love about the regional council process to start with is this, you know, very intentional industry heads, academic heads working together. That says a lot right there. Right off the bat, it talks about the integral role and the holistic approach to the economy that has to happen. So, you know, that perspective of academia and industry working together is key. And again, Startup New York really drives industry and drives academia to work together, I think, in important ways. These centers of excellence, the CATs, they're all part of that ecosystem. A lot of the incubators and hotspots connect to colleges and universities. It's a great asset that we have, and the more we can connect the colleges and universities with industry, the better our economy will be. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Assemblyman?
Assemblyman Walters.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Zemsky, thank you for being here today. It's great to see you again. A couple of questions. You know, as the main economic development authority for New York State, have you done anything to reach out to small businesses across the state to understand what the impact on the governor's proposed 67% increase in the minimum wage is going to have on them?
Well, I've met with business, statewide business entities, and so I would say yes, right there. And of course, you know, we are throughout, ESD is present throughout the state. We're interacting with business all the time. We have offices in every single region of the state. So people don't have a hard time finding us, and we are very eager and very active in the business community, as you would imagine.
Well, the Empire Center has reported, and similar studies done by Cornell and the Congressional Budget Office, that the $15 an hour minimum wage could cost as many as 200,000 low-income jobs throughout New York State. In upstate New York, western New York, where the average wage is only a little over $16 an hour, won't that be working against all of the efforts that you're making through Empire State Development?
You know, one of the things I think you have to keep in mind is, and this gets lost in the discussion sometimes, that this is intended to be phased in over many years. So this is like phased in over the next 5.5 years, I believe, is what the proposal is. You know, the minimum wage hasn't done a good job over a long period of time of keeping up with inflation. I think we recognize that it's very, very hard to support yourself, let alone a family, on the minimum wage. And a lot of people actually are working at minimum wage jobs and then qualify for assistance because it's, you know, you're still in a poverty situation, which is not really what the idea of working was all about to begin with. So there are a lot of folks that would be helped by the minimum wage. The economy has been great for investors for a long time, but hasn't been as great for workers for now a long time. I think the idea is to give people an opportunity. Those folks, and there are millions of them whose wages would be lifted from this proposal, will realistically spend almost all of that money in the local economy. So I think there's a lot to be said for lifting people out of poverty, giving people an opportunity to work their way out of poverty. You shouldn't be working full-time like that and have such a difficult time supporting yourself or your family. I think the additional spending will be good for the economy. This is phased in over many years. You know, every time there's a minimum wage discussion, there's always debate. I get reasonable people can differ on this, of course. There's going to be opposing views. Every time there's been a minimum wage debate, there's, you know, always lots of dire predicted consequences. Our economy is doing well, but it's not doing well for everybody. And, you know, I think it's high time we recognize that there's been a great increase in the disparity of wages, and people have really struggled in many ways for a long time. So I think it's fair. I think it's reasonable. I think it's doable over 6 years upstate. And I think reasonable people can differ on that subject.
Well, I think that's certainly up for debate whether or not it would have a positive impact on those that are struggling in the economy. It may have a negative effect. So as far as regulations in New York State, you know, it's an estimate, the Senate Coalition did a 2013 regulatory reform report. They estimated that New York State regulations, about $274 billion, are cost New York State. That's about a quarter of the state's economy. What impact can you have on addressing some of those burdensome regulations that really, you know, we hear time and time again, the tax foundation, whatever, New York's one of the least friendly places to do business in the nation.
Yeah, and, you know, there are a variety of different types of regulations, so it really depends on which ones you're referring to. Certainly, there's probably many regulations you wouldn't want reduced at all. So what I've seen is there are some industries where we've reduced regulation, and the craft beverage industry, for example, is one obvious example where we've, you know, rolled back some kind of silly, outdated liquor authority regulations and have cleared the way for entrepreneurship and investment, and those industries have boomed. So we are all about economic growth, Assemblyman. I'm only doing this job for one reason. I would love to see that kind of growth happen in all industries, but all across the state. So I am keenly interested in meeting with and using craft beverage as an example, any industries or any people that feel like New York is in their way in terms of creating investment and creating jobs with regulations that are outdated or superfluous or what have you. We're interested in meeting and talking. I don't think these regulations are set in concrete, but it's very difficult to just talk about regulations as a whole. There's, you know, health regulations and life safety regulations and worker protections, and, you know, there's a number of regulations. So the question is, which ones are standing in people's way? I'm interested in, you know, participating in that discussion, and if we can develop, you know, changes in regulations that will help those industries grow and don't have, you know, profound negative consequences on the environment or people's safety or health, I think we are all for it. We are all for it.
Good. Just one thing I want to touch on. There's been some controversy and perhaps an investigation going on into the way that some of the Buffalo Billion contracts have been awarded. I know that you know, we're talking about another $200 million for SUNY PI in Chautauqua County, $125 million in Clinton County, as was referenced before. Are we doing anything to change the way that those type of programs are awarded or contracted with the people who are doing the work?
You know, we are, of course, meeting all of our fiduciary responsibilities with respect to any ESD contract that it has. So I'm very comfortable and very confident that ESD has been very good stewards of the public trust and public dollars in that respect, so I don't see us changing that. We are, of course, answering any questions that any inquiring bodies may have and participating fully, and you know, we'll go from there. But I think there's a lot of good opportunity ahead through these projects for Chautauqua County and Clinton County, and I think, you know, to be determined what the findings are.
So you're comfortable with your policies and procedures now, and you don't think they need to be changed?
What's that?
So you're comfortable with the policies and procedures as they are now, and you don't anticipate making any changes?
Well, I'm very comfortable
going
with
forward.
Of course, I am the president of Empire State Development, and I can speak for Empire State Development.
Right.
And I'm very comfortable and confident in the procedures. It's the only agency in the state of New York, the only entity that I can speak to.
Sure.
And I assume you're asking me about Empire State Development's policies and procedures.
Right.
And,
okay.
And I'm extremely confident and proud of them as they are.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Senator Liz Kruger.
Hi, Mr. Kremski. So I was very pleased to hear your presentation and all the good work we're doing. My concern is for people, even here in this audience, it's hard to actually prove it. It's hard to find all the data in any one place. You and I have had that conversation. You've explained ESDC puts its information up on its website. I spent some time since our last conversation looking through that. But of course, we learned that so much of the economic development money doesn't necessarily go through ESDC. And yet it's out there, and how are we evaluating, looking at all of it and looking at what kind of metrics are being used to determine whether things are going well or not. So it turns out there's a variety of different models being used around the country. There's Wisconsin, Florida, and Indiana have single databases bringing together a range of subsidies throughout their state governments into one database. You and I had talked about how valuable that would be, so I would happily refer you to those 3 states. Illinois, North Carolina, Maryland, Florida, Indiana all have a much more user-friendly model for drawing down the information, downloadability, the ability to combine various data into one site. So I'm hoping you're going to answer me, yes, Senator Kruger, that's what we're going to try to do now.
I'm not, of course, familiar with exactly what Florida, what their procedures are, but let me say a few things. You know, ESD, we are active, obviously, with the regional councils. And I think one of the things that New York State does that none of these states do is this, what I would describe as kind of regional economic development. So I think we're really the progressive state. I mean, I want to say that up front. And I've spoken with Brookings, I've spoken with many others. What New York State does is the most progressive form of economic development to my way of thinking, period. End of discussion. That's my opinion. I think we have brought an incredibly collaborative, strategic, robust approach to economic development. And we have created a lens through which, a strategic lens through which all of these state programs are reviewed. Now, we didn't create a lot of these state programs, but the regional council, through their strategies and the involvement of all these volunteers, frankly, have really, I think, done a good job of identifying and prioritizing the types of projects that advance the strategy. So there are now, through these REDCs, and you know the REDC priority projects are on our are on the Regional Council website, and all of the CFA projects are on the website. You can find all of the CFA projects on the website. Some of them are, and keeping in mind, these are all projects that come through the lens of the REDC but then go out to the state agencies. The REDC does not take the place of the state agency, and the REDC doesn't even have any statutory responsibility to make decisions. It just makes recommendations that go on to the state agency. All those state agencies have programs and rules and regulations and reporting requirements that they follow. So would it be possible to take some of the state agency information and aggregate it maybe in a more robust way? I think we can and should look at that. But there is a lot of information. It's difficult to always know. You know, there are some projects that get approved this week. Maybe they're done in a year. Maybe they're more complicated construction projects. They're not done for 2.5 years. You get the permits. If it's in New York City, it might take even longer. So I think we can, you know, look at it making a more robust website, but I think that at the core, our economic development is regional and is strategic, and I think it's improved. I think we have a ton of more information than we ever used to as New York State on these projects. I think these regions, here's the New York City's regional report this year, do an amazing job. These are also online. They do an amazing job of laying out their strategy, laying out the progress of their projects, laying out metrics for their metropolitan areas. And it is true that different areas have different things they're measuring. In Long Island, I know they're very concerned about the cost of housing, and young people are leaving because of the cost of housing, so they probably spend more time measuring housing costs and, projects that provide more affordable housing. In Buffalo, everything is affordable. So we are measuring different things, and we're focused on different things strategically. But yeah, in everything we do, there's room for improvement. But I think the amount of information on these websites, through these regional reports, which are really extraordinary documents, and through the CFAs, are at least, hopefully we'd all acknowledge, dramatically more information than we had only a few years ago.
So does it have the analysis of what metrics you're using to determine the cost-benefit analysis of each project? Is that on the website?
Yeah, there's so many different types of projects.
No, but each project would have its own metric for how you evaluated whether you gave them the deal or not, and
So,
in
like-
theory has analysis
Yeah.
of how much you're spending for new jobs on each project, for retention of jobs on each project. Is that all available in those reference reports?
I think in a general sense it is, in terms of the way it aligns with the strategy. So, for example, on an Excelsior tax credit project is a very clear metrics around investment and job creation. And that would be like an ESD type of project that's very straightforward. But then you have projects like, activating the waterfront and place-based investments that have really proved to be very successful. I mean, we've seen this in other parts of the state and certainly in Western New York, where creating vitality and activating the waterfront and bringing the public out and is an important component, I think, of economic development, but maybe more difficult to measure in terms of jobs. But I think all those types of why those projects are supported, why they receive money, for the first time in a very long time, all connect back to a very clear strategy. So I think the strategy is extremely clear, and I think it's, for the first time, really easy to determine why was a project supported and how does it connect to a strategy. We never had a strategy before. But some of the metrics, I admit, are more difficult, and that has to do with, how do you connect waterfront development to job creation or any number. That's just one example. There are so many examples of projects like that. If I talk about walkable downtowns, do you think, how do I measure walkable downtowns in terms of economic impact exactly? I can measure it in terms of how the region's doing, and we do. But there are project by project, as you start to drill down, it becomes becomes fuzzier in some ways to connect to a metric like jobs.
Our time is up, so I will defer to another round. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Assemblyman Gary Pretlow.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Mr. Commissioner. I guess some of my questions are similar to Senator Kruger's. Since its inception, the Regional Economic Development Councils have spent approximately $3 billion. Can you tell me, plus or minus 5%, I guess, how many new jobs have been created in that period?
Well, we know that the projects have leveraged considerable investment of $22 billion. 200,000.
But one of the purposes was for job creation.
Yes,
So do you know about how many jobs were created in the 1,600 and so projects that were done?
Yeah,